The Witch, Season of Sunlight, Year 1. The red sand tasted faintly of caramelized and salted sucrose as she coughed it back up and tried to get her bearings. Pulling herself right side up, Lorelei fought back the glare, both from the light and her unthankful companion. The grey, bat-winged man-beast in front of her, who had begun to root through her duffel with a disinterested interest that suggested he was only doing it ironically, paused only to laugh nebbishly as she struggled to move around, and with some difficulty managed to pull herself onto a nearby rock outcropping.
Wow, what is this? Chocolate? What the hell, Lizzioid? If I had been packing, I would have brought at least 90 things of canned beans or something. Fail. Guess this is forfeit. Consider it a friendship tax.
Dennis, who was known to his enemies as Dark Lord Dennis and to his sister as 10 feet away or the cops get involved, jerk face, shoved the chocolate bar into his mouth, wrapper and all, tearing into it without any sense of enjoyment. Seizing the opportunity to get her bag back from where Dennis had let it drop to the sand, Lorelei made a mad fumble for it. Dennis was too absorbed in demonstrating how much he wasn't enjoying his pilfered provisions to do anything about it, and Lorelei just managed to grab it back and quickly began unpacking her wheelchair, thanking whatever stars shone down in the alien sky above that it hadn't been damaged by her landing.
So, I take it you're my new friend, then. I realize this might be a kind of rough first meeting, but...
You certainly seem like you've got some interesting opinions. Maybe we both have a passion for video games? Help me, or so help me I'll find a way to throw you into the sea and laugh as you flounder miserably in the water and are torn apart by the world's first and last roving band of carnivorous seals. Though her heart whispered tempting conversation starters, Lorelei's inner dialogue was interrupted by a hearty belch from the man in front of her, who sniffed and rubbed his fingers under his nose.
So. I'm Dennis, dweeb. Don't forget the name, 'cause I'm the Dark Lord. You may not believe your luck that you got paired with me. A. I'm a stud. B. I've slayed so many crap-eating scum-suckers that even taking care of a half-human like yourself will be easy. C. I'm a demon. My demon powers are the best.
He stopped to flex, exposing a little too much midriff. Lorelei, however, had eased herself back into her wheelchair and finished taking stock of her inventory, and had suddenly realized something. As aggravating as this Dennis was, he was harmless. For better or for worse, she was here. Taking a deep breath, Lorelei put on the most winning smile she had, running her hands back through her hair.
Dennis, then? I'm Lorelei. Looks like I lucked out, all right. So, where are we? The beach. But does this beach have a name? I mean, I'm sure that they were considering naming it Dark Lord Beach, or something, but that would have been an unfitting tribute. Tch, you bet it would have. Like, maybe a fissure or a chasm or something cool like that.
Dennis grinned widely, completely missing the tone in Lorelei's voice.
This is Garlow Point. Supposedly there was a land bridge or something that led to the demon realm here at one point, I don't know. I was busy throwing spit wads at my sis in that class. How would a land bridge lead to the demon realm? Magic, geez.
Dennis threw his arms up into the air. It was impossible to tell his expression under his dark, of course, sunglasses, but Lorelei decided it was safe to assume he was always angry, glowering, and creepin'.
Right. Well, are there any people around here? I mean, where are we? Like, Give me a second here.
Grabbing a surprisingly sharp rock and wincing as it lightly cut her fingers, Lorelei decided to take note that the first challenge was not to accidentally lacerate herself and bleed to death. Dennis would probably just steal her stuff and wander off. Placing the now bloodied stone back onto the beach quickly, she grabbed a broken and waterlogged branch instead, and tried to write.
Sha, what is that chicken shit chicken scratch?
Dennis smiled heartily, congratulating himself on another sick burn. But Lorelei refrained from writing further until his smugness wore off, replaced by impatience, and asked her question again.
Right. Describe Garlow Point. We're on the southeast of the island, I think. I don't know for sure where we are. I just got here myself, Do you think I'd normally wait around here for losers like you?
But piece by piece, Lorelei managed to extract information from the petulant Dark Lord, and soon had a somewhat workable set of guesses on distance, though she'd be the first to guess her math was as suspect as her chicken scratch. Supposedly there was a jungle in the center of the island, but loads of other locales in the area. The rules of geography as she knew them didn't seem to apply. And unfortunately, Dennis really didn't seem to know much about the island. Where to get food, or where to find people, or even if there were any other people around. Even if they weren't, people, Lorelei conceded to herself. For all she knew, the island could be inhabited by a species of sentient palm trees. The thought made her laugh a little, only for that to fade as she realized that she hadn't seen a single tree around the beach since she had came to, nor the song of birds or the chatter of insects. Besides herself and Dennis, the beach seemed utterly alone.
What are zoning off for? Was all that too complicated for you?
For the first time, Lorelei shot Dennis a glare, and to her surprise, he backed off a bit and mumbled something under his breath. Something unpleasant, but subdued. Sighing, Lorelei placed her fingers against her knees and looked back to her writings, already being submerged into the sand.
Look, Dennis. We got off on the wrong foot, okay? I don't know why you're here. I didn't choose you or anything.
His mouth went slightly agape, but Dennis didn't interrupt.
I chose 2 other friends, about my age. For whatever reason, they're not here. It's just you and me, that's it. And you, I don't know what's happened to my family, my mom, everyone that I care about. But we're here, now. So, let's try to work together, okay? I know you see me as a burden right now, and know quite a lot about the island. But I think we can not only survive, but have a lot of fun together as well. Team.
Dennis spat on the ground, and with the tiny and ineffective flutter of his tiny and ineffective wings, walked off into the distance. Lorelei stared into the water, her messy-haired and blank-eyed expression looking back at her. Now, she was completely alone. Once she had finally stopped trembling, Lorelei looked through her bag. She hadn't packed much food, mostly medicine and personal supplies, books, and the like. It had seemed like a distant hope that she might expect help, but... She shuttered her eyes, closed her bag, and slung it across the back of her chair. That was the past, now. She'd have to make it on her own. Despite the self-reassurance making her feel slightly more cool and slightly less alone, it didn't help when an ear-splittingly loud shriek pierced the sky, wearing on like a faulty fire alarm. Without thinking, Lorelei sped towards the sound. A familiar figure who hadn't managed to get very far on his own, surrounded by 3 more figures, crooked against the violent violet glow of the setting sky.
Look at this one. Got a lot of meat on him, I reckon. Yeah, but it's demon meat. You know how rancid that stuff tastes. Rancid meat still burns well enough.
The whimpering Dennis quickly tried to hide behind Lorelei as she wheeled onto the scene of the confrontation, casting a shadow as he cowered behind her chair. In front of them stood 3 emaciated figures, shreds of clothing. Very modern-looking clothing, Lorelei noted with a distinct unease. Hanging from worn and waterlogged bones.
Take her. She's, like, half dead anyway.
Ignoring Dennis, Lorelei knit her brow at the humanoid ghasts in front of her.
Look. He's with me, and no one is eating anyone right now. Get out of here, or there'll be trouble.
Their faces rattled in unison, but no laughter came from their salt-stung lips. Instead, a horrible stench wafted from the wounds and what was left of their flesh. Dennis gagged, but Lorelei had grown up near the yards, and closed her eyes, trying to sound less scared than she felt.
Come on, girlie. Just leave that one with us. Just enough for a bite, just a little one.
One of the 3 muttered under his ratchety breath, stepping forward slowly, torn arm outstretched.
We'll let you go. You'll be joining us soon enough, anyway. We'll save some for you, we will, we will.
He smiled, then looked astounded as Lorelei roared as loud as she could and charged into him. To her surprise, the man, who looked to have once been an adult himself, was almost so light that she didn't even feel as he fell to the ground, emitting a high-pitched whine and a horrible smell. The other two bared their teeth, but made no move to advance. Lorelei stared at them more confidently than she felt, and finally the two grabbed their fallen, dead, said an unwanted thought in the back of her mind, comrade, and dragged his prone body into the sea. Finally, they had vanished from sight entirely, and Lorelei collapsed back into her chair with a sigh of relief.
What the hell, dude, I had them. Yeah, you're welcome, Dennis. What were those things? Oh, right. You wouldn't know, because you're useless. Sea ghouls. I think they're remnants of people like you that came here before. That's right. You'll be joining them soon.
Dennis grinned and laughed unpleasantly, but Lorelei ignored him, deeply unnerved.
Others like me? That came here before? That's not possible. They had just started sending us now. No they didn't. People have been coming through here for like forever. My stupid know-it-all sis would probably be.
Dennis stopped, and affected an incredibly high-pitched voice.
Blah blah blah, boring stupid stuff. Aren't you glad you don't have to deal with that? You frickin' should be. Was your sister eaten by sea ghouls, then, or did she just get tired of your amazing charm and good grace?
Lorelei regretted the words the moment they had come out of her mouth, but Dennis shrugged.
Nope. Look, whatever. Stop following me, okay? I really don't want to have to deal with you any more than I have to, and I'm not gonna get in your way or anything, but I'd much rather play some serious esports than deal with another headache. That's cool. Yeah, that's what I though, hey. You do that, Dennis. Good luck with your sports. I'll be rooting for you. Maybe we'll cross paths again? Just be careful, and don't keep near the water for too long. I guess this is goodbye for now, but it was fun.
Lorelei smiled brightly, turned, and wheeled away towards the beckoning canopy of the jungle, not bothering to look behind her, even as wild calls to wait up and the wheezing of someone unaccustomed to running echoed from increasingly far away. The jungle, or this jungle, because Lorelei was determined not to get complacent and start assuming anything about the island until she had gotten her bearings and maybe a map, was situated on soil slightly less red than the sand of the beach. It seemed to be fairly poor soil, too, for large and bone-jagged chunks of mold-covered rock made it difficult to wheel through. And the trees were high and mighty, like no trees she had ever seen. The jungle was still unusually quiet, but Lorelei was starting to get used to that. She had started to spot the first animals she had seen, tiny lizards perhaps no larger than a fingernail, attached to the trees and drinking what looked to be an amber-colored sap. They would turn all but noiselessly to face her as she approached, and what with some coating the surface of most trees, the effect was unnerving. At first. But soon, their presence became somewhat comforting. They didn't pose an obvious threat, or spit tiny globules of poison or anything. So Lorelei decided to tentatively put them down as cute, probably harmless, with no intent on investigating that possibility further. If they left her alone, she'd do the same. What shocked her, however, was that the jungle was not devoid of humanoid habitation, either. Soon after she had began cautiously navigating through it, the unmistakable sight of smoke drifting above the tree line had caught her eye, and Lorelei had slowly begun to make her way towards it. To her surprise, a tiny cottage had been thrown together in the midst of the forest. And everything, from the trees to the animals, seemed to give it a wide berth. The door was carved from darkened red wood, with a golden-colored handle shaped like some sort of monster. Lorelei plucked up her courage and knocked, twice. The door opened on its own, slowly, and Lorelei let herself in. Inside, the cottage was dim and unlit. A tiny fire, mostly embers, provided some warmth now that the suns were in the exodus of night. An even tinier table, meant clearly for only 1 or 2 guests at most, was the only obvious feature besides a cluttered bookshelf, and the only person sitting at the table was a woman in weathered clothing, ancient and green as pressed mint leaves. She fixed Lorelei with a critical eye, saying nothing at first. Then,
"Well, sit."
Lorelei wheeled close, but didn't move from her own chair. Her host laughed toothlessly, apparently finding something very amusing. Lorelei chose not to speculate on what.
I do not often receive visitors, at least not those I have not invited myself. Well then, kindling. You look fairly starved in the face, and unless the lines under your eyes are charcoal, exhausted. Care you for some tea? Yes, please. That would be wonderful.
She said it without thinking, and Lorelei wondered if perhaps it was the wrong answer, if the strange old woman might somehow take offense, or poison the tea. But she showed no sign of either joy or anger, instead merely nodding her head. In a second, the ghostly outline of a teacup poured strange, beige tea into the air, which nevertheless held its shape as if a cup was present. Her host grabbed the air around the ghostly drink, held it to her lips, and drank, watching Lorelei all the while. Smiling, Lorelei offered a quiet thanks, and drank hers as well. It was warm. Too warm, and extremely bitter. The taste reminded her of the dehydrated tea powder that rationing had given to her mother while telling her that work was too important for her to sleep. Trying to stop her hands from trembling, Lorelei set the cup back down against the table. Both it and the tea disappeared in thin strips of beige light.
How troublesome! A guest near tears after drinking my tea? Are you strong, or are you not? It is a concession of the weak to admit their worries so carelessly.
No, it isn't. I'm alone and I'm frightened and no one here is kind, damn it. Lorelei wanted to scream, but she didn't allow the old woman, who was now grinning in obvious enjoyment, the satisfaction. Instead, she lay back in her chair and nodded again.
You're right, my apologies. Thank you very much for the tea.
To her surprise, the old woman cackled and placed her strangely half-moon-shaped chin on her wrinkled palms.
Ah, so you do have some fire in you. Very good. Would that the last whom visited Auntie Mildred had been so amusing. Are you an, aunt, then? Of course not. Don't be daft, kindling.
Mildred sniffled, and more tea poured itself in anticipation of her mild dissatisfaction.
I am a witch, and this is my domain. Here I may work undisturbed, and in return, disturb those so foolish as to take their tea with me. Oh, but aren't you frightened?
Her teeth reared into a smile, but it faded in poorly hidden surprise as Lorelei shook her head with a slight smile of her own.
No, not at all. That sounds pretty cool. I used to read stories about witches back home. I read a lot, you see. I can all but imagine.
Ignoring her sneer, Lorelei continued speaking, surprised to find her glass of tea having decided to reappear at some point, as if it had changed its mind.
My companions, the people I had hoped would be here weren't, unfortunately. I got saddle, the person I found myself with. Having trouble? You can say it bluntly, you know. If you can't say it bluntly, then why try to say it at all? He's kind of a tool. Oh, is that all? A tool? From your stuttery red face, I would have assumed he was a jilted lover, a monstrous murderer, a saboteur of your life work, or something of the like. Boring, how terribly boring.
And yet Mildred didn't seem bored at all, drinking another swig of tea completely unfazed by the bitter herbal taste.
And tell me, then. What of you? Were you so lost as to simply run into the jungle? Yes, basically.
Mildred laughed heartily, and to her surprise, Lorelei found herself laughing, as well.
I guess so. I was totally lost. It was a stupid hope. But I'd hoped this'd be more like an adventure, you know? A fairy tale. Something kind of happy. Where I'd be able to make friends, and maybe do something good. Protect the helpless and build up the hopes of people I couldn't.
Lorelei looked away, not willing to look at the suddenly very serious witch facing her intently.
Couldn't really help back home.
The embers of the fire continued to crackle, magically fueled even though they had long since burned to cinders. When Lorelei finally looked back, several strange, unpleasantly sweet-scented rolls were in front of her, slathered in a syrup much more pungent than the weak sugar substitutes they'd had back home.
Well, eat. You look as if you've starved yourself, and I will not have myself considered a bad host. They are not poor, despite the look, you will find them to be healthy as well, though somewhat insubstantial and unfilling.
Lorelei cautiously broke off one of the rolls. It was sweet, but also light, almost like biting into air. The witch watched her patiently, face betraying no expression. Gulping, Lorelei finished the segment and smiled.
Thank you again. That was pretty good.
Her answer seemed to satisfy the witch, who simply nodded.
Yes, yes. It is but one of the talents I have learned over the years, at one cost or another. Now then. What did you wish to do, in your world? I wanted to travel to the stars.
Lorelei answered without a second thought. She had assumed Mildred would say something biting, but the witch nodded for the second time.
Very well. And why did you wish to so travel to the heavens? I thought maybe the planet'd look smaller up there. More like something could be done for it. And I guess I really just wanted to look out the window, and see nothing but the glow of distant stars.
Mildred, who had at some point summoned a foul-smelling pipe between her stained teeth, exhaled a wretched smoke into the air around them. Lorelei coughed, and Mildred offered her the pipe, misunderstanding. Lorelei shook her head, and the witch shrugged her ancient shoulders.
So I see. You are young, naive, but good-hearted. You are not so young as to be foolish, nor so naive as to believe that you will be successful in anything. Even more to that point, you seem quite ready to give up, despite your claimed optimism. How wretched! Do you really think that if you have such glorious dreams, they are the kind of dreams to be achieved through resignation?
Slamming the pipe against the table, Mildred glowered at her. Lorelei shook her head, but refused to feel intimidated.
No. And I'm not giving up. I've only met you and, that guy so far. But that's not everyone here, I know it. And you know what? Dreams change. People change. I don't know if that's what I want anymore, but I have that right, to rediscover my dreams here. And I'm not going to just let anyone tell me that I'm naive, or foolish, or even good-hearted. Thank you for the tea, and the conversation.
Lorelei rolled back, bowing her head slightly. She felt oddly victorious, and to her surprise, Mildred nodded her slightly in return. Not exactly a bow, but an acknowledgement.
Well, it was certainly an experience. I have fed you, and given you tea. None can say I was a poor host, and there have been worse guests to Mildred in days gone by. You will probably meet a dire fate, but I will not say it was entirely unpleasant. You may go peaceably.
Somehow, that made Lorelei feel even a little more confident, and with a smile, she turned towards the door.
Slow down next time, but Lord. I'm amazed I even followed you after you abandoned me and left me completely on my own like a total monster. I bet you even enjoyed it, didn't you? You're the entire reason no one likes girls, or cripples. And furthermore.
But Lorelei never found out what was furthermore exactly, because Dennis had quickly trailed off, and a horrible screeching cackle had begun to fill the room. It was slow and grating and shook the windows and the fire and the table, and as Mildred laughed, she herself shook, tiny and wispy until the laugh died in an instant, leaving only her, glowering at Dennis, who was beginning to shake.
This is the luck that was shackled to you? How wonderfully misfortunate! How terrifyingly stupendous! I cannot believe my good fortune. This changes everything. A moment, then.
Mildred rose to her unimpressive height, as the hut began to warp and disintegrate around them, books miniaturizing and disappearing into Mildred's hat as she removed it and held it outstretched, exposing a mop of greasy black hair in the process.
Miss Mildred? What exactly are you doing?
Lorelei asked diplomatically, trying not to laugh at the now openly weeping Dennis.
What does it look like, kindling? I've decided to come with you. A chance like this is a rare chance. I would be a fool not to exploit it. Besides, I know the one you are with. His cruelty amuses me, and there is little I enjoy more than humiliating those more wicked than myself. We shall have much fun together.
Her teeth leered at Dennis, and he whispered something that sounded suspiciously like Opal's no in reply.
And all the books, then? Is it not obvious? I've decided to take you on as my apprentice. Do not get the wrong idea and assume that I like you in any way, I do not. You are a meddlesome disturbance to my silence who happened to bring me an amusing gift, and little more. I shall teach you of my own interests. Do you understand? Absolutely.
She couldn't help it. Lorelei began to grin from ear to ear, cheeks ruddy with excitement. Mildred replied with an arrogant click of her teeth and a snap of her fingers which summoned forth a yellowing scroll onto the now barren dirt between them.
Well, then, as I'm sure that the Dark Lord has told you, you are in the Maw of Strelitz. No, he didn't, actually. I could have if I'd wanted, gee. But you did not, did you?
Mildred rolled her eyes in a split second, one overgrown fingernail pointing to a richly illustrated jungle on the parchment, covered with countless stains from age and spilled beverages. Likely tea.
If it is civilization you seek, we must go north and then cross the waters of the Maw. They will likely be dangerous, and tear into your weak flesh like knives. The Dark Lord is guaranteed a quick and gruesome death.
Mildred smiled ghoulishly.
But a true witch would choose instead to go west, further into the Maw. For it is there that an ancient library was once built, and filled with the secrets of those who have come before. I will leave the choice up to you, as I shall for as long as we travel together. Well then? What shall it be? Perhaps I'm not a true witch, but I'd hate to have anyone torn up by the Maw, even Dennis. I could take it. Ugh. Ignoring that, besides. This isn't the first I've heard of people who came before. To the two of you it might not be unusual for people to come to this land from outside, but where I came from, we assumed that we were the first off-worlders to find it. No, it's important to know more.
Mildred said nothing, but smiled.
Such a terrible choice. Well, I don't entirely mind. So long as the Dark Lord uses his terrible strength to carry my things. You shall you not? Higai. Shall you not? Sure. Fine. I won't accidentally drop them in a pit, or bury you with them while you sleep or anything. Gah. Good to hear, as I have nothing to carry.
As Mildred laughed raucously and Dennis scowled at both of them in tandem, Lorelei closed her eyes and tried to imagine what her mother would say if she could see the three of them. This wasn't what she had wanted, or imagined. But she was used to that. Smiling, Lorelei began to navigate cautiously west, not stopping to wait as Mildred floated next to her, expression unreadable, and Dennis ran to keep up. Up ahead, the sky began to grow ominously dark, resplendent, and darkened clouds blending into one another. For the newcomers had arrived at the end of the sunlit season, and the season of storms was drawing near. Chapter end.